David was once the shepherd boy who slew Goliath, chosen by God and anointed king over Israel. His faith and courage were unmatched, and his heart belonged to the Lord. But even the mightiest can fall when pride and comfort creep in. This is the story of how the man after God's own heart stumbled and how God's mercy brought him back. At the height of his power, David sent his army to war while he remained in Jerusalem. Idle in his palace, he walked on the roof and saw a woman bathing, Bathsheba. This moment of lust ignited a series of tragic decisions that would mark the darkest chapter in David's life. Though he had many wives, David sent for Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, one of his loyal soldiers. He slept with her, and she became pregnant. Instead of confessing, David sought to cover his sin. The king, who had once honored God, now manipulated others for his own desires. David summoned Uriah from the battlefield, hoping he would go home to his wife and assume the child was his. But Uriah refused, choosing instead to sleep at the palace gate out of loyalty to his fellow soldiers still at war. David's plan was crumbling. Desperate, David wrote a death sentence and gave it to Uriah to deliver to Joab, the commander. Uriah unknowingly carried his own execution orders. He was placed on the front lines and abandoned. He died not by enemy hands, but by betrayal. After Bathsheba mourned, David took her as his wife. From the outside, it seemed the matter was hidden, but nothing is hidden from the eyes of the Lord. What David thought he buried would soon be exposed by divine light. God sent the prophet Nathan to confront David. Nathan told him a parable about a rich man stealing a poor man's lamb. David, angry at such injustice, declared the thief should die. Then Nathan replied, "You are that man." In a moment of piercing clarity, David saw his sin. No excuses, no blame shifting. He had sinned against the Lord. His confession was simple yet profound. "I have sinned against the Lord." Brokenness led to repentance. Though David was forgiven, consequences followed. The child conceived in sin became ill. For 7 days, David fasted and wept lying on the ground. But the child died. Mercy does not erase consequences, but God's grace carries us through them. After the child's death, David worshipped. The same man who wept in ashes rose to honor the God who gave and took away. His heart, though shattered, was still drawn to the Lord. Worship after failure is a sign of true repentance. David comforted Bathsheba, and in time she bore another son, Solomon. God loved this child and sent word through Nathan to name him Jedediah, loved by the Lord. From brokenness came blessing. David's story teaches us that even God's chosen can fall, but they can also rise again through humility and repentance. His life wasn't defined by his failure, but by his return to God. The grace of God is stronger than the deepest sin. Psalm 51 was born from David's repentance. "Create in me a clean heart, O God." He didn't ask for restoration of his crown, but his connection with God. This is true repentance, valuing God more than reputation. David cried, "Against you and you only have I sinned." Though he wronged others, he saw sin as an offense against God. True repentance begins when we stop justifying and start seeing from God's eyes. He continued, "Restore to me the joy of your salvation." Sin steals joy. Guilt burdens the soul, but God in his mercy restores what was lost when the heart returns in truth and surrender. David's repentance wasn't shallow. He didn't just regret getting caught, he was crushed by the weight of what he had done. Yet even then, God did not abandon him. Mercy met him in his lowest place. It's comforting to know that God's love is not based on our perfection. David sinned grievously, but God's mercy covered him. This is the gospel echoed in the Old Testament. God redeems broken people. We live in a world quick to cancel, slow to forgive, but God doesn't discard his people when they fall. He disciplines, corrects, and restores. David's story is proof. Failure isn't the end with God. God didn't just forgive David, he still used him. David would write Psalms, mentor Solomon, and prepare for the temple. Redemption is not just about being cleansed, it's about being useful again. Though his legacy is stained, it's also sacred. David is still called a man after God's own heart, not because he was flawless, but because he returned when he fell. That's the difference between Saul and David. Where Saul justified his sins, David repented. One hardened his heart, the other humbled it. The path back to God is always open, but only the humble can walk it. Your past doesn't disqualify your future. David shows us that God can turn disgrace into destiny. The broken king became a vessel of divine grace. If you've fallen, don't stay down. God's mercy is calling you back. Like David, confess, weep, rise, and worship. There is more ahead when you surrender the pieces of your life to the potter's hands. God's discipline is not rejection, it's redirection. David learned that God's love includes correction, and through it, we're shaped into vessels of His purpose. We are all capable of terrible mistakes, but we are also loved by a God who restores. Never believe the lie that you've gone too far. David's story proves otherwise. Bathsheba, once the symbol of sin, became part of the lineage of Jesus. Redemption didn't just affect David, it rewrote her story too. That's the power of grace. Jesus, the son of David, came through a family tree full of sinners and saints. God doesn't erase the brokenness, He redeems it. The beauty of David's fall is not in the sin, but in the restoration. The deeper the fall, the more stunning the mercy. God's glory shines brightest through the cracks of human failure. Psalm 32, another of David's confessions, says, "Blessed is the one whose transgression is forgiven." Joy comes not from perfection, but pardon. Maybe you've been hiding your sin like David once did, but God sees, and His eyes are full of mercy. He calls you not to shame, but to restoration. Will you respond? Confession is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the doorway to healing. David's life was transformed not by covering up, but by opening up to God. God doesn't use perfect people, He perfects those He uses. David's life reminds us that grace doesn't just forgive, it renews. Though David was broken, he was never abandoned. God's covenant love is steadfast. He walks with us, even through our darkest valleys. From the ashes of failure, David found purpose again. So can you. Let God write the next chapter. You are not beyond His reach. Redemption is real. David's journey wasn't a straight line of holiness. It was marked by highs and lows, victories and failures. Yet, through every season, God remained faithful. His story reminds us that sanctification is a lifelong process, not a moment of perfection. When David sinned, he could have hardened his heart and refused correction. But he didn't. He let the truth wound him so that healing could begin. God often speaks through confrontation, and those who listen grow stronger through it. True leaders are not those who never fail, but those who return to God when they do. David's kingship endured not because of his perfection, but because of his repentance. This is what makes him a model of spiritual resilience. Have you ever been confronted by your own sin? Like David, the first response may be shame, but the Spirit doesn't bring shame to crush us. He brings conviction to change us. Guilt leads to death, but godly sorrow leads to life. God doesn't define you by your worst chapter. He sees the whole book. David's worst moment wasn't the end. It was the turning point. What the enemy meant for destruction, God used to deepen David's faith and testimony. The Psalms David wrote during and after his fall reflect a heart laid bare before God. Psalm 51 and Psalm 32 are windows into the soul of a man fully exposed and fully embraced by mercy. His pain became praise. David didn't let his failure keep him from fulfilling his purpose. He returned to leading his people, writing worship, and preparing for the next generation. Grace doesn't excuse sin. It empowers restoration and purpose. God called Solomon, born after David's repentance, to build the temple. It's powerful to see that out of brokenness came beauty. Redemption doesn't erase our past, but it rewrites our legacy. David prepared materials, plans, and resources for the temple, even though he wouldn't build it. This shows a humble heart, wanting God's glory even when he wouldn't get the credit. Brokenness produced a deeper worship. Even in old age, David worshipped. He passed on faith to Solomon and instructed him to walk in the Lord's ways. His fall didn't define his finish. God writes better endings than we deserve when we surrender our story. Your greatest testimony may come from your deepest wounds. Like David, your failure can become someone else's hope. Don't waste your pain, let it preach. God turns ashes into beauty for those who trust in him. If this story spoke to your heart, don't forget to subscribe and join us. We post daily videos to help you grow in your walk with Christ. Leave a comment below. Has God redeemed your story like David's? Let's walk this journey of grace together.